They laughed at him for being poor and mocked his tiny lunch every single day. But one cold afternoon, that same lunch changed everything. When a hungry old man sat by the school gate, this boy shared his only meal without hesitation. The next morning, cameras caught something unbelievable, and the truth left the world speechless. Stay till the end. Like, share, and subscribe for more touching stories. Caleb was a quiet black boy with a smile that could melt away sadness, though life had given him every reason to frown. Every morning, before the first light crept through their small window, his mother packed him a simple brown paper bag for school. Inside, it was always the same: a peanut butter sandwich, one banana, and a bottle of water. It wasn't much, but for Caleb, it was enough. Their home stood at the far end of a worn-out neighborhood. Walls faded, the roof patched, but the air inside was always warm with love. His mother worked as a cleaner at a nearby motel, her back often aching, her eyes tired, yet her spirit never broke. "Kindness doesn't cost anything, Caleb," she would often say, brushing his cheek with her calloused hand. "Give even when you don't have much. That's what makes you rich." But the world didn't see Caleb the way his mother did. At school, his old shoes and worn-out clothes made him an easy target. The other kids laughed at him, laughed at his faded backpack, his torn sneakers, and his little lunch bag. They'd whisper loud enough for him to hear, making jokes that stung like cold rain. Yet Caleb never answered back. He just smiled softly, sat alone under the big oak tree at the edge of the playground, and unwrapped his sandwich. Every bite tasted of love, but also of loneliness. While others shared laughter, Caleb shared silence. Still, deep down, he carried something most of them had never known: gratitude. Then, one chilly afternoon, as the wind brushed through the playground, Caleb noticed something near the school gate. A man sat on the curb, wrapped in torn clothes, his face pale and weary. His eyes were heavy with hunger, and in his trembling hands he held a cardboard sign that read, "Please help. Hungry." People passed him by as if he were invisible. Teachers avoided looking at him. Parents shielded their children and hurried away. Caleb watched quietly, his heart tightening with every second. He looked down at his brown paper bag. His stomach growled softly. He hadn't eaten breakfast that morning, but his mother's words echoed in his heart. "Give, even when you don't have much." Without thinking twice, Caleb stood up. He held his lunch close as he walked toward the gate. The security guard raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Caleb knelt beside the man and gently placed the brown bag in his hands. The old man looked up, shocked, as if no one had ever done such a thing before. His eyes filled with tears, his lips trembling, but Caleb just smiled, that soft, humble smile that came from somewhere pure. He turned around and walked back toward the playground, lighter than before. That night, Caleb went to bed with an empty stomach but a full heart. His mother noticed the untouched lunchbox when she unpacked his bag and said nothing. She simply hugged him a little tighter. She knew what her son had done, and in her tired eyes, pride glowed brighter than any light. Across the street from that school, someone had been watching. A stranger with a phone camera had captured the whole thing the moment a poor black boy gave away his only meal. Before sunrise the next morning, that 30-second video spread like wildfire across social media. The caption read, "When you have little but still choose to give, that's love." And by the time Caleb woke up for school, the whole world was already talking about him. By morning, the entire city seemed to know his name. Caleb didn't understand it at first. When he walked through the school gate that day, everyone was staring, not with mockery this time, but with surprise, confusion, even admiration. The kids who once laughed at him now whispered quietly as he passed. Some smiled awkwardly, others avoided his eyes. His teachers looked at him differently too, softer, prouder, as if they were seeing him for the first time. When Caleb reached his classroom, his teacher called him to the front. The principal was waiting, holding a phone in her hand. On the screen was a video, his video, the one showing him giving his lunch to the old man by the gate. Someone across the street had filmed the entire moment. They hadn't zoomed in, hadn't spoken, just recorded that simple act, a poor boy giving away the only food he had. The caption on the video read, "This boy had nothing, but he gave everything." It had gone viral overnight. Thousands of people were sharing it. Comments poured in from around the world. This made me cry. Faith in humanity restored. This boy is an angel. Caleb didn't know what to say. His heart raced as his classmates clapped, some even cheering his name. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. But instead of pride, he felt something else, worry. He didn't do it to be seen. He did it because it felt right. Fame wasn't what he wanted. The attention made him nervous. Yet, deep inside, there was also a spark, the feeling that maybe kindness did matter, and maybe the world still had a heart. By noon, reporters had started arriving at the school gates. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed, questions flew from every direction. How does it feel to be famous? Why did you give your lunch away? Did you know someone was filming? Caleb could barely speak. His mother was called to the school. She arrived still wearing her work uniform, her hands trembling from shock. She wasn't used to cameras or crowds, but when she saw her son surrounded by people, she smiled through her tears. The principal invited the media into the school hall. Caleb and his mother sat on stage, overwhelmed. A local reporter interviewed them, asking what inspired the act. His mother answered softly, "We don't have much. But my son's heart is rich." Applause filled the room. Cameras kept flashing. The video had now reached 1 million views. Strangers online were offering to help. Money, food, scholarships. For the first time, life looked like it might change. That evening, when Caleb and his mother walked home, neighbors waved and smiled. Someone even left grocery bags on their doorstep. The house that once felt so small now felt full of light. But Caleb couldn't stop thinking about one thing. The old man. The hungry stranger he had helped. Where was he now? Was he okay? Did he even know what had happened? Caleb went to bed that night with those questions swirling in his mind. He looked out the window before sleeping, hoping maybe somehow he'd see that man again. And then something unexpected happened. Early the next morning, a sleek black car stopped in front of their small house. 2 men in suits stepped out. They looked serious, but kind. One of them held an envelope. Caleb's mother froze at the door, confused. The man smiled gently and said, "We're looking for Caleb." Caleb peeked from behind his mother, his heart pounding. The man handed her the envelope and said, "It's from the person your son helped." And before they could ask another question, the men got back in the car and drove away. Inside that envelope was something that would change Caleb's life forever. The morning sun was still soft when Caleb's mother held the thick white envelope in her trembling hands. It had no return address, no name, only a short message written in neat handwriting on the front. To the boy with the brown bag. Her eyes filled with confusion, and Caleb stood beside her, his small heart pounding fast. She carefully tore open the top and pulled out a letter. The paper slightly wrinkled, as though written in a hurry, but with care. As she unfolded it, a folded check slipped out, falling softly onto the floor. Caleb's mother froze. The check was written for $25,000. Her hands began to shake. She could barely breathe. Caleb, wide-eyed, looked from the paper to his mother, unsure what it all meant. Slowly, she unfolded the letter and began to read. The words were written in shaky handwriting, but they carried weight, the kind that makes your heart slow down. "Dear Caleb, I don't know your last name, but I know your heart. Yesterday, when you handed me your lunch, you didn't just feed me. You reminded me that kindness still exists. That small brown bag gave me more than food. It gave me hope. I wasn't really homeless. I was lost in grief, in guilt, and in my own mistakes. Months ago, I lost my wife and daughter in an accident. Since then, I've wandered these streets trying to understand why I was still alive when they weren't. I had money, a home, even success once, but I lost everything that mattered. And when I sat near your school yesterday, I wasn't begging for food. I was begging for a reason to live again. Then you came along, a small black boy with a soft smile and a sandwich. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't judge me. You just gave. That single act saved me. You gave me something I'd lost long ago, faith in humanity. The check is not a reward. It's gratitude. From one broken man to a beautiful soul who still believes in kindness. Use it to make your dreams come true. And remember, the world saw what you did because the world needed to. A man you helped when no one else did." By the time she finished reading, tears streamed down her face. Caleb stood frozen, unsure what to say. His mother knelt, holding him close, whispering, "You see, baby, kindness always finds its way back." Word spread quickly again. The story that had already gone viral now had a second chapter, the mysterious letter from the homeless man. News channels picked it up. Headlines filled the internet. Black boy's act of kindness changes a life and earns him a future. But Caleb didn't care about fame or money. What mattered to him was that somewhere out there, the man he'd helped was okay, healing, breathing, living again. That evening, his mother took the check and placed it carefully inside a Bible on their small table. "We'll decide what to do with it when the time's right," she said softly. Caleb nodded, still quiet. His heart felt heavy, but also full. He wondered if he'd ever see the man again, if they'd ever get to speak face to face. And deep inside, he hoped that one day he would. The next morning, as he prepared for school, something caught his attention outside. A black car, the same one from before, was parked down the street. A man in a gray coat stepped out, holding something in his hand. Caleb watched from the window. The man looked up at their small house, then smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, before turning and walking away. Caleb didn't realize it yet, but the man wasn't gone. He was planning something much bigger, something that would soon change Caleb's world in a way no one could have imagined. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly began to settle again for Caleb and his mother. The noise of fame had started to fade, and though people still recognized him on the street, he had returned to being just a humble boy with a gentle heart. He still carried the same brown paper bag to school, not because he needed to, but because it reminded him of who he was. Kindness didn't need cameras or attention. It only needed truth. But every now and then, when the sun dipped below the rooftops, Caleb would glance out his window, half expecting to see that same black car parked quietly in the distance. The man in the gray coat had never returned since that morning. Yet somehow Caleb felt that he wasn't gone forever. And he was right. One cold Friday morning, when the sky was painted with gray clouds, a knock echoed through their small home. Caleb's mother wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door. Standing there was the same man, older, gentle-faced, his eyes soft but filled with something deeper, something healing. He smiled warmly. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice low and kind. Caleb came running from the back room, and when his eyes met the man's, recognition hit like a wave. It was him, the man he'd fed that day by the school gate. But he didn't look like a homeless man anymore. His hair was neatly combed, his clothes pressed, his face clean. He looked peaceful. He stepped inside, removing his hat respectfully. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," he said. "I've been meaning to visit, but I wanted to come when I had something worth bringing." In his hands he held a small wooden box. He placed it gently on the table. Caleb and his mother watched quietly, unsure what to expect. The man took a slow breath and continued, "My name is David Turner. Months ago I lost everything that mattered, my wife, my daughter, and my will to live. I wandered the streets without purpose until the day your son gave me his lunch." His voice trembled slightly, but he continued, "That small act of kindness changed me. It reminded me that goodness still exists, that there's light left in the world. And that day, I promised myself I'd do something with the life I almost gave up." He opened the box slowly. Inside lay a single golden key resting on a velvet cloth. "This key," he said gently, "belongs to something I've built in your honor, something called the Brown Bag Foundation. It's a community kitchen and education center, made to feed the hungry and help children like Caleb reach their dreams." Caleb's eyes widened as his mother covered her mouth in disbelief. The man smiled faintly. "The check was only the beginning. The real gift is this place, built because one boy reminded me what kindness means." Tears rolled down Caleb's cheeks as his mother reached for his hand. The man placed the key in Caleb's palm and said softly, "You didn't just give me food that day. You gave me my life back. Now I want to help you change others' lives, too." Silence filled the room, the kind of silence that feels sacred. Caleb didn't speak, but he nodded slowly, holding the key close to his chest. David smiled and looked at his mother. "You raised him well. The world needs more hearts like his." Before he left, he turned to Caleb one last time. "There's something else I want you to see," he said. "Come with me tomorrow morning. I promise it'll be worth it." And with that, he walked out into the soft drizzle, his figure fading down the road. Caleb stood at the door, clutching the golden key, unaware that what he would see the next morning would not just change his life, it would change an entire community forever. The next morning arrived with a golden sunrise spreading softly across the horizon, painting the world in gentle warmth. Caleb woke earlier than usual, his heart pounding with both curiosity and nervousness. The small golden key still lay on his bedside table, shining faintly in the morning light, a symbol of something far greater than he could yet understand. When David's car arrived outside, Caleb and his mother climbed in silently. The drive felt long but peaceful. The city slowly changed as they passed through streets Caleb had never seen before, tall buildings giving way to quieter neighborhoods, and finally, to an open field filled with laughter, movement, and life. The car came to a stop before a large building with clean white walls and a wide banner across the front. The words, bold and bright, read, "The Brown Bag Foundation, because kindness feeds the soul." Caleb's breath caught in his chest. For a long moment he couldn't move. Children were running through the gates carrying books and lunch trays. Volunteers handed out food to families, and laughter echoed in every direction. It was alive, vibrant, full of hope. David turned toward him, eyes soft with pride. "This," he said quietly, "is what your one meal created." Caleb stepped out of the car, his shoes crunching softly against the gravel. He watched as a young girl helped an elderly woman carry her tray, while another boy handed out fruit to children. Every single bag of food they gave out had a small brown logo, a paper lunch bag with the words, "Inspired by Caleb," written beneath it. Tears welled in his mother's eyes. She gripped his shoulder gently, unable to speak. David led them inside the building, where the walls were lined with photographs, smiling faces, shared meals, and small acts of compassion captured forever. In the center of the main hall stood a framed picture of Caleb himself, the one the cameras had taken the day after he shared his lunch. Beneath it, an inscription read, "One boy's kindness fed a man's soul, and now feeds thousands." Caleb stared at it in awe. He never imagined something so small could grow into something so powerful. David's voice was steady as he spoke. "We've already served over 5,000 meals in just a few months. Every child here gets food, books, and a safe place to dream, because of you." The boy turned to face him, eyes glistening. "Because of me?" he whispered softly in disbelief. David smiled, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Yes, Caleb, because of your heart." As they walked through the hall, volunteers stopped to greet them, their faces lighting up when they realized who Caleb was. Some shook his hand, others simply said thank you, with tears in their eyes. To them, he wasn't just a boy. He was a symbol of what humanity could still be. Then David guided him outside again, where a small crowd had gathered. A red ribbon stretched across the entrance to a new wing of the building. David handed Caleb a pair of scissors. "This one," he said, "is for you to open." Caleb's hands trembled slightly as he cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but this time he didn't feel shy. He smiled, not for fame, but for the feeling of being part of something meaningful. That night, as they drove back home, Caleb looked out the window quietly. He didn't say much, but his heart felt full, fuller than it ever had before. He realized something that night. True wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you give. And in that moment, he made himself a promise. He would never stop giving. The boy who once had nothing had now given the world everything it needed most: hope. News of the Brown Bag Foundation spread like wildfire. Within days, Caleb's story was everywhere again. But this time, it wasn't just about a boy who gave away his lunch. It was about what that lunch had become. Television anchors spoke his name with pride. Newspapers printed headlines that read, "One meal, one miracle." One boy who changed everything. From small towns to big cities, people began sharing their own brown bag moments. Students donated lunches to those in need. Restaurants partnered with the foundation, offering free meals for the homeless. And families across the country began writing, "Inspired by Caleb," on their brown paper bags, teaching their children what kindness truly meant. Caleb's school even held a special assembly in his honor. The same classmates who had once laughed at him now stood clapping, their eyes filled with admiration. Some came forward to say they were sorry. Others thanked him for opening their hearts. Caleb didn't need to speak much. His quiet smile said everything. His mother, sitting in the front row, watched proudly with tears glistening in her eyes. The boy she once worried would be crushed by poverty had become the symbol of compassion for an entire generation. Weeks later, David stood beside Caleb at a community event. Reporters surrounded them, microphones pointed in their direction. But instead of talking about money or fame, Caleb looked into the camera and spoke from his heart. He said, "If you ever think you're too small to make a difference, remember, even one meal can change a life." Those words echoed far beyond that crowd. They became the motto of the foundation, printed on every wall, every meal bag, every soul it touched. Years later, when Caleb grew older, the foundation had expanded to dozens of cities. He never forgot that cold afternoon, the old man by the school gate, or the moment he decided to share what little he had, that single choice, born from kindness. Not wealth, had created something far more powerful than anyone could have imagined. One act of love had turned pain into purpose and struggle into strength. And though time passed, the message remained eternal. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is beyond measure. As the camera faded out on the final shot, Caleb walking through the foundation's courtyard, surrounded by children laughing and eating, the narrator's voice echoed softly. Sometimes the smallest act can spark the brightest change. Because even when the world forgets, kindness remembers. He gave away the only meal he had, and the world gave him back a lifetime of love. Remember, kindness never goes unnoticed. It always finds its way home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional, life-changing stories like this one. Stay inspired. Your act of kindness could be the next miracle.